What's up guys, my name is Ace and welcome back to The Breakdown, the series where I analyze gameplay to help you improve. In today's episode we're going to be analyzing a gameplay from NewEraCat, and this gameplay is on Sub-Zero, which is one of the newer maps from the Nemesis DLC. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so I want to keep this one as concise as possible, so I am going to be skipping around a little bit throughout the video. So getting right into it, the first mistake that I notice here is when he comes around this corner, he crouches before coming around the corner. Now, you may have seen me mention this in the first breakdown episode. This is not really a smart move to do. I know it does work out for him in this particular situation, but it's much easier to hit a crouching target that's moving very slow than it is to hit a standing target that's moving quickly and able to strafe and get back into cover very quickly. So it's not typically the best idea to crouch before coming around the corner. But like I said, it did work out for him in this particular situation. So skipping ahead just a little bit here, he knows enemies are at the top of the stairs. He knows there's enemies up in this room. He can see them on the minimap. Now normally throughout this gameplay, he's really good at keeping his crosshairs where he expects enemies to be. But this is one little mistake that I noticed with him, one little slip up where look where he's aiming right now. He's aiming at the top stair. There is no way an enemy could be right where he's aiming, and this actually causes him his first death. He ends up aiming way too low and not where an enemy can even possibly be. He should have his crosshairs up right around the top of that desk level there, because that's most likely where an enemy would be hanging out. And because of this, he ends up being way too low and he gets in a gunfight and he just doesn't have time to adjust. So after spawning in, he heads back towards the building, and there's a couple little things I want to point out as he comes into this building. First off, pay attention to his crosshairs. He's good at keeping them at the right level, and he's looking pretty much where an enemy is going to be. He's ready for that guy. His teammate ended up getting the kill, but again, look at him crouch as he comes around the corner. What your enemy sees in that particular situation when you do that is they'll see your elbow come out really slowly around that corner before you can even see your enemy, so they have plenty of time to react to you. Now right here, I don't know if he didn't see that IED, but it was pretty obvious to me, and he still crouched and went right up and actually detonated that IED. He didn't die from it, he was far enough away, but it did hurt him quite a bit. Now right here, it's kind of important to note this. He pushed up right here, and he doesn't have very good cover. I know he's leaning around the corner, so he's kind of limiting his line of sight to those enemies, and maybe he thinks he's got a lot of cover, but in this particular situation, he's got himself trapped in a corner, and he's crouched, and he can't move at all. He's a sitting duck at this point. If an enemy were to come around the corner, which is what happens, he's in trouble right now, because mobility will beat him in this particular situation, especially since he has an assault rifle. If he had an SMG, maybe it wouldn't be so bad, or a shotgun. It wouldn't be so bad because he does have a really short line of sight there. But in this case, he is a sitting duck, and I think he was a little bit more confident. He was a little overconfident with the amount of cover that he had by leaning around this corner. Alright, so again, we're skipping ahead, and right here, he learned from his first mistake on the stairs. He's aiming, he kept his crosshairs up above the stairs where he expected enemies to be, and he was able to win that gunfight. And again, as he moves up through here, pay attention to his crosshairs. He's ready for gunfights, and he's aiming where he should be and where enemies he would expect enemies to be, and that's how he's able to win that gunfight so quickly. Now right here is a really minor mistake that I actually missed when I first watched it. I had to watch it back again to really see what happened. After he got this kill, he earned his IMS and he tried to call it in right away without properly sort of clearing out the area, making sure he was safe, and he also exposed himself to that doorway. So all it took was an enemy to basically take one step to the side to get to him and get a line of sight on him and kill him. I would have dashed a little bit to the right at this point, cut off that line of sight to the doorway, which would have forced my enemies to have to come all the way around that corner to see me and get to me, and I still would have been able to call my IMS in. But, like I said, it's just a minor mistake. Alright, so skipping ahead again, right here he's checking that long line of sight, he sees it's clear, he calls his IMS in a great spot by the way, really hard to see that IMS until it's too late, pushes up, gets that kill because he's ready for the gunfight like he almost always is. But now, look what he does. He goes for the reload in this corner. He still has 20 rounds in his magazine, so he definitely doesn't need a reload. And all it takes is an enemy to walk around that corner, and he's once again just a sitting duck and an easy target for that enemy to kill. This is not a safe place to reload at the moment, unless he's like really desperate to get that reload in. But he's not desperate for a reload. He has 20 rounds left. That's plenty of rounds to kill multiple enemies with. So I would have, if I really needed a reload or felt I needed a reload, I would have backed off and got behind some real cover. But instead, he just kind of tucks in the corner to cut off a little bit of that line of sight. And it doesn't work out for him because the enemy just has to come around the corner to get that kill on him. So coming up again, I can't stress enough how important it is to keep your crosshairs where you expect enemies to be, and you'll see a really good example of this right here. He's ready for enemies, he's able to snap on to target it very, very quickly, and that's how he's able to win those gunfights with ease. Skipping ahead slightly again, he once again makes the mistake of calling his IMS in before clearing the area out. It was kind of a funny situation. Him and his enemy, they called their IMSs in at the same time, and they ended up sort of trading kills with their IMSs. Had he pushed into that room first with his gun, killed any enemies that were there, and then placed his IMS, he probably would have survived that situation. But I like how he takes this IMS out, he cuts off that really long line of sight, and he stays far enough away to take that IMS out. Now in this situation right here, he also recognizes the long line of sight and he wants to get out of there. He knows what's at his back, he knows there's a long line of sight at his back, and he knows there's a sniper there because that sniper just killed that teammate in front of him. So he slides through here as quickly as possible. He's aware of his surroundings, he's aware of who can see him at any given time, and it's really smart. It was a bit of a risky move to do that, but sometimes you have to take some risks. Now here, he sees that sniper come around that corner, and he knows that's a sniper, so he purposely cuts off that long line of sight and doesn't allow that sniper to get a long line of sight on him. He backs off, and that was a really smart move as well. Skipping ahead again, he comes around these corners, ready for gunfights, checking his corners. It's awesome, great awareness there. One thing though is he tries to hip fire. I would never really recommend hip firing with an assault rifle, especially one with a slower rate of fire like the AK-12. Even in closer ranges, it's just not reliable to hip fire with an assault rifle like this. Now it's time to make a decision right about here. He finishes this kill, backs off, gets his cover. Now what would you do in this case? You saw that there was at least one guy there. If you paid really close attention, you could actually see there was two guys that are still alive around that corner, two enemies. Would you challenge this or would you back off in this particular situation? I personally would back off and try to attack him from a different angle or just completely cut my losses and get out of that situation. But he decides to try to challenge them. Now it's very clear that that guy did see him before he moved back behind this wall. So that guy's likely just posted up waiting for him to come around this corner. And again, he comes around the corner crouching. And I think he actually leans around the corner. Leaning is okay, but it's not as good as many people expect it to be. So he does try to challenge and he does get killed. Okay, so I'm just going to let the gameplay play out now, and I'm going to kind of go over what I've seen from him, what I like and what I don't like about his gameplay. So the things I like about his gameplay is he's almost always ready for a gunfight. His crosshairs are where he expects enemies to be, or at least very close, and that allows him to snap onto targets very, very quickly and finish kills. Another thing I really like is he seems to be aware of where his enemies are at, and he seems to be aware of lines of sight and who has a line of sight on him, and things like that. As for some of the things I don't like, and things where I see a little bit of room for improvement, he seems to think that he has more cover than he does when he's leaning. I wouldn't rely quite so much on leaning and using cover that way. It's not as good as most people think it is. And also crouching before coming around corners. I know it worked out for you a few times, and it probably does work out for you in some situations, but I would try to avoid doing that because you're just creating a slightly smaller but slower moving and easier to hit target when you do that. I recommend staying standing and staying mobile before or when you do come around corners. Another thing that I noticed with his gameplay is he doesn't perform actions that take his gun away, like calling in kill streaks or reloading. He doesn't necessarily perform them in safe areas. So before calling in your kill streaks, clear out the area a little bit first, or make sure that you have teammates that are watching some lines of sight for you so that you can call that in safely or reload safely. And also find proper cover if you are going to reload, and you don't necessarily have to reload after every single kill. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Breakdown. I am still accepting gameplay submissions, so I will leave a link to the email address below, or I will leave my email address below in the description. You can email me gameplays. Keep in mind they have to be at least 720p, they have to be HD, and I'm also not looking for exceptional or even really good gameplays. I'm looking for average to below average gameplay where there's some struggle going on. Now it doesn't have to be a terrible gameplay that makes you look bad. Like for instance, I think he went 22 and 13 or something like that in this gameplay with 18 tags picked up. So it's not a bad gameplay by any means. It was a good gameplay, but there were some really obvious and noticeable mistakes that I could analyze. And I can't analyze those mistakes if you're going flawless or if you're leading the lobby and you're carrying your team. There's very few mistakes to analyze in those situations. So I'm looking for something that's average to below average, something where there's some struggle. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.